Okay, good afternoon. Today is our week 5 for the new media convergence. So basically today we are going to catch up a little bit about what is convergence that we couldn't cover, I think, in previous week. And also we will start a new topic about social TV and the dual screening as the convergence. At the last hour, we will discuss about, we have a small assignment that you to brainstorm about your research topic, and you are going to present your research proposal, I think next week, right? So it will be good that I think this process will help you to clarify and make your research more focused. Okay, so here is the list for you to think about, how to write a research proposal and how to write a research papers. And so basically, I will encourage you to think about the value added, which means after you finish the research paper, and what kind of additional maybe additional value that you are going to think about. Perhaps you can use it to develop into a conference paper, or even better off, a journal article. So I think don't just hide your assignment or final papers at your desktop or your computers. Just make it visible. That's what I will encourage you. And thinking about the proposal, how to make it more significant, and how to thinking about your proposed topic, whether there are some previous literature review can help you to have a better focus on your research questions and methodologies. And finally, will it be feasible actually to be executed in one semester? Because I saw some of you actually proposed quite ambitious, mixed method design. So maybe they won't be that feasible, or it would took too much effort, I think. Yeah, okay. So assignment, we will talk about this later in the last hour. Here, I just want to, I think, okay, we will put it in the last hour. So today we are going to talk about media convergence. We talk about new media. We talk about disruptive innovation. Yet, what is convergence, which is very close, related to our topic of the class. So tell me, what is your definition of convergence? Rona, what do you think when people talk about convergence? Because you are very interested in new media, basically you have a good background information and understanding already.
I think there are many different kinds of convergence, like technology convergence, media convergence, and regulation convergence.
Very good. You have, read our article, so you got the idea. Okay, so let's go back to what is converge. Okay, converge is come together or to meet, means everything, or now perhaps we will focus more on technologies or different kinds of media. They actually merge together and become on the same platform or across these different screens. So the first time people talk about convergence, this word, is talk about converge of modes. So it showed in 1983. So it talked about the technologies of freedom. So basically, it's putting different kinds of modes of communications together. Okay. So Negroponte is an MIT, professor before, and then he wrote about a book about being digital in 1995. So digitalization will be the first step. People start to think whether such a convergence become the norm, and making different forms of communications fuse together, put in the same platform. So convergence as the possibilities where everyone can think about the cooperation. So in the very beginning, the print and the broadcasting, they can put together. Now we can have the multimedia forms on the platform. Okay, so media convergence, that's a guru called Henry Jenkins, and he actually produced, I think it's a very interesting videos that we can watch together. So you can tell this is, I think it's a very classic and historical piece. So basically it's not at the present, right? Right? It's actually in the certain point of time, and when the new media convergence become something that people just notice. So it's very important. I would say it's very important for Jenkins actually take notes of the very important concepts that he mentioned in the clips. And then also, I think which big concepts that you have captured and still stand true or has been modified or transformed a little bit. What kind of concept that you have captured from this video? Even though I think it's situated several years ago when the media convergence becomes something new and noticeable, and Jenkins actually theorizing the concept. What did you pick up when you laugh at a certain point?
Yeah, the Obama speech was turned into a song. And in the video, it said that
It's a lip sync,
yeah,
something like digital mashup. At that time, it's a digital mashup, it's a creativity, right? So what do you think about it?
Before, those clips wouldn't be able to be edited by like normal people. If you're not a producer, you basically won't be able to upload videos. But now we have YouTube, and it's more easy to get a editing software. So I think in the video it says grassroots. If like more people can become producer and producing things instead of just watching.
Yeah, so it's the starting point that people can turn from the consumer to prosumer concept. And this kind of digital so-called mashup will actually stimulate the creativity. At the same time, it also can be used in political parties, decide to have more like a sarcastic use or different kind of purposes. But at this moment, if we look at that, we may have doubts about the deep fakes, right? But deep fakes won't be easily just sort of manipulate the video, but also with more high tech like AI to put it as a real person. They have the misleading purposes. What else you have captured like transmedia or participatory culture or anything that you feel like has been become even more salient or has been transformed at this moment? Yes, sir?
It's the transmedia.
Okay.
It mentioned the metrics, right?
Yes.
From the comics to movie.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think that's one of the significance of the convergence. So, like, content can be transformed to different media, so that the people can see it in many forms. It's also about cross-platform. I think the video also mentioned that. Yeah. I think that's the concept I listed.
Okay, good. So basically transmedia, meaning you have one maybe cultural product like a film or anything, and it has the potential. You can use some, different platforms to tell pieces of the story. Yet it has the integrated marketing concept. They all end up with one more coherent message. For instance, maybe you have different characters, and in the film there will be 2 hours or a little bit more longer, then it only has limited time to actually show the storyline, right? Yet there may be some depths behind the characters and roles, and some stories can be the background. Then you can put on the website, or even we will have the second screen. We will have the apps, or they have some original comic books has drove the story, and the film become one of the additional product to actually turn the comics to the imaginary world to a real like a 3D story. So there are lots of things can be done, and the Matrix would consider as the starting points of that. People trigger that kind of thoughts called transmedia. Okay. And what else?
I think they cover most of the parts I thought of, transmedia and participatory coaching.
So how about the digital storytelling? Jenkins keeps talking about everyone should have the digital voices. And in the past, it would be more like the top-down, right? Like blockbusters or Hollywood, those producers with big budget will control, or even the political campaign, how to shape, no matter Obama or Trump or, different kind of candidates, they have different ways to shape them into framing them into certain public figures, and with lots of videos and different contents to let people know them. But as ordinary people like us, we may not in the past will be able to tell our story. However, right now we have the internet, we have lots of platforms like I talk about. I report in the CNN will be a starting point to recruit so-called citizen journalism from different parts of the world to contribute their stories about their community or their regions or whatever. But right now, YouTube or lots of platforms, they encourage this kind of creativities and the personal voices. And even those we don't have the platform, we can actually open our rooms in the clubhouse, or we can record it our own podcasts. As long as we have some expertise or we have some stories to tell, as long as we have the listeners who actually can think our contribution is valuable to them, I think we all have these tools or the digital space for us to be visible. Okay, so media convergence is a situation where the multiple media system coexist and the content can flow very fluid across them. So it's an ongoing process. So people may argue convergence happen more rapidly or radically during the time when the internet merged different forms together. But still, after the mobile broadband, we also have this kind of even everywhere, anytime, this kind of communication mode, and become even videos can be watched everywhere, anytime. That couldn't be thinkable at a time, maybe starting to have the internet. And right now we have the 5G. It could actually also transform to include more like a SR, the mixed reality technologies in future. So there will be even more convergence. The convergence will be not just the online, offline, but also will even harder to maybe in future that our five senses will be easily embrace all the different kinds of media cues. So it's not a fixed, it's always changing. So I won't say convergence ends already. Convergence will ever happen, okay? And organization-wise, not individual, they also have to think about how to use the combinations of media and to make their more productions or their businesses become more effective or efficient. And convergence will be sensitive to two parts. One is the content, the other one is the conduit. So content is easy to understand about the concept, but what is conduit? Conduit means platforms or means. It's like where the content has appeared. So it could be OTT, and it could be on the website, it could be radio station. So when the convergence become here, sometimes it will become quite messy and very chaos. And when we want to analyzing it, maybe considering what kind of regulation should be applied to this new media, we need to think about both from the angle of the content, angle of the conduit. Okay, so it's like a two layers thinking. So earlier, Laura mentions, some parts of the new media convergence from the Meters Chapter 3. So basically, when we talk about convergence, the top three, I would say, the enabler or, important aspects of convergence. First is technological convergence, media industry convergence, regulatory convergence, and finally, after these convergence, Chengchi mentioned a lot, is actually related to convergent culture. Okay. So I think the first part is easy to understand. We need to have certain new technologies, and then it actually sort of impels this kind of changes. So in the very beginning, I think Terry Fu mentioned about the digitization will be the key factors, functionary convergence from analog to digital, okay? And so this is including after digitalization, so everyone become networked, or organizations, or even countries. And the compression technologies also let our channels become, we can use the channel to produce even more content. And what is the meaning of impartial, homogeneous? What do you think? And we certainly can understand why it's adjustable, because we can easily change and co-edit and then do lots of different kinds of things to the content. Or like the mashup, you can alter, certain original meanings of certain videos or audios or anything. So why is impartial or homogeneous? When we are talking about diversity, it's interesting they also mention about impartial. It's like whatever I sent to you like today, I asked you to pay attention to the digital consent form for our recorded video in the class, then everyone will receive the same thing. Everyone receive, when you are CC in the email, you will receive the same content. So which means homogeneous content sent to you impartially. So these are also very important characteristics. You don't want, in the same group, and people will receive different messages. And we will have various devices across screen, right? Also different distribution systems. Yet, when we're looking at the figures, there are so many different kinds of devices and the platforms, and and then we think about how can actually we quickly switch to A to B to C, the different kinds of devices, because they can talk to each other, right? So there must be some interchangeable phone. That's very important. It sounds very intuitive. Audiences, we want our content to be at a place, at a time that we prefer. However, that is not easy to be possible if the systems, they cannot interchangeable with the interchangeable form, or interoperabilities is not exist, they cannot be done. Okay, so here just the basic layer of the technologies, and we need to talk about industry, right? Industries, two key concepts I would like to tell you is related to media concentration. So in Taiwan, we constantly worry about media monopoly, okay? Because monopoly will be something related to antitrust. We want diversities in views. We don't want certain dominant perspectives, no matter it's or ideologies related to political economy or anything, actually become very prevails in our society, and we would like to appreciate the diversity. So media concentrations, if the regulation allowed certain media companies to merge together, or even cross over from like telecoms to broadcasting, or from maybe the newspaper can actually buy off the radio or TV stations. In the past, they have a very fixed rule, the ownership or crossover rules. They don't really like this kind of crossover. However, after the internet, the game has been changed, especially 1996 Telecom Act in US. It turned into the deregulation board. So media concentration process involve the regulatory, economic, and the industry changes. The benefits of the media concentration is to have the synergy effect. So people in different, maybe people like in the past, the Eastern TV, they purchase the radio, have the newspaper, have the website, and still they own a lot. So at that time, they feel like they could have the synergy effect. So they can cross promote each other's contents. And some people, they have the concept like TV stations, if they can produce a video, and they can send the videos to the radio news, and let them to capture some of the interview pieces and rewrote maybe the script and dub into the radio news of their own version. And the newspaper can also be benefited from the TV news because they also have some background and some related raw data from the interviews. Even though there are differences of the media, so the newspaper would have to have more in-depth story coverage. So they have to go to the field, maybe cover more stories, and then to fill in the background information. So that they feel like if one media like TV, video has all the different media components, they can actually share each part to the other media companies they own, and they can work together. So that's called synergy effect. So there are two types of integration. One is horizontal, and the other one is vertical. So what's your understanding of the two? Horizontal and the vertical integrations.
I think horizontal is to merge with similar companies.
Okay, so horizontals will be you buy the company similar to your original business, and so you don't need to learn something new, but you will get a lot of similar businesses, and then you like MSO, the cable TV in Taiwan, they definitely not just purchase one system, one cable TV locally. They will have maybe 20, even more, in the whole country like Taiwan, so they can actually have the subscribers from the northern to southern Taiwan. So MSO will be one of the examples that horizontal integration. Or if there are some news company purchase other news companies, so they know what they are doing. They are good at their core businesses. So it will sort of expand their territories to other regions or even countries. Like News Corp in Australia also have some businesses or influence in US or other country or UK. So what is vertical integration?
It's acquisition between maybe your supplier or a distributor, and you form a chain so you can dominate the entire production distribution chain.
Okay, good. So basically you will think about what is the so-called value chain of your business. For instance, here I have the example, it's called Viacom. So we talk about Viacom, these companies, they will actually own a films production, films branding, okay, Paramount. And they also can have some cinema chain. So basically after they produce the film, they will have certain theaters to actually showcase their content and products. In the past, they have the blockbusters, right? At the rental stores, they also own the rental stores. So after maybe the first few weeks, and when the film after the release, and then there's a box office actually die down or subside, they can put it to the next window, which is the rental offices, or they can also thinking about there are some cable stations, and they can have the airing times for them. So they also own TV stations. So that's another kind of thoughts. If I want to sort of acquisite or merge with other companies, whether I will just do one business at the core value, the core operations that I'm very familiar with to expand to different regions, or I would like to control from the upstream to downstream, then nobody can actually stop me to showcase or my own product. And these two are very different kinds of integration. But integrations has the synergy, has the crossover promotions, and also have a very smooth streamline in terms of from the productions to the sale, these kind of benefits. Yet these the economic theory thinks this efficiency, it can increase the consumer satisfaction and also help the company to have better competitive advantages. Yet the other side will worry about when too many media companies they merge together and being controlled under a few people, then there will be the barriers for the free flow of the ideas in the marketplace. So these are the other side they worry about based on the democratic theory. They think everyone should have enough different sources of information, and the citizen equip the knowledge and being informed so they can make good decision for them to actually choose different kinds of maybe options or media products or anything they can make their own make up their own mind based on the diversity of the ideas. Okay, so it also will be effective of the self-governance. So basically the media convergence keep changing, and journalism sometimes they also feel if the convergence become more, then they probably couldn't because they always have the organizational policy. And like Taiwan, our TV stations or TV news or different kinds of news, they may have their political preferences or beliefs. So they tend to actually tune the content to certain aspects. So if you were the journalist in different kinds of company, you may have certain implicit or explicit, constraints to frame your story. So these are the worries, but there are also some counter views that some past studies said they don't really feel that, even though because the boss won't even bother or interfere with their journalism, freedom of speech, and they can just do whatever they feel like being the force state. Yeah. So there are concerns about the media convergence as we look up. So it could be a threat to democracy and so-called media accountability. Okay, and the public sphere could be dominated by limited political or economic viewpoints of the big media. But there will be another stories, another aspects for you to think about. So how about the internet or the mobile, current stages when we have, can open, it seems like open up to the users or the small maybe media brandings or like a we media to produce lots of perspectives. Do you think it brings the antidotes to the past challenges that only some oligopolies in the mainstream media? Do you think they actually bring up some hope or good changes? You understand my question? What do you think?
I think it's really hard to say. I think it's a wave after wave. I think at first it does, but then after companies such as Google, Facebook, and Amazon, they expand and then control a lot of resources. They started to have a big say in a lot of things. So Would it start become another kind of oligopoly?
Yeah, that's a good answer. So we need to keep observing because right now, in the past, if we're looking at maybe the top 10, the content providers in US, Hollywood, or, ABC, NBC networks, they still can have, I mean, certain amount of influences to other countries, but maybe the top tier of those people who are interested in English content. But right now we have the internet, right? We have the internet, we have Google, we have Facebook, and I think they are free of the geographical boundaries, also the language, you know, maybe challenges. Because even when I want to check your assignments, alternatively they change to Chinese, and I was so in shock. I said, "What?" So Ming Ming wrote something in Chinese for the iMix English class. So I have to go back and say, "Oh, that's the original." So now becomes such customized services. And then YouTube, you can have different kinds of caption. So basically, they use the platform and have the huge, gigantic user base all over the world. They are even, I mean, Google or Amazon. I don't know. They have the Apple and especially Facebook. They actually own much more populations than any country, I would say. So they don't really interfere with the content, maybe they will be better. They still have different characteristics from the so-called media company in the past. They still have some arguments in terms of whether they should be considered publishers or they are the pipeline. Okay, Convergence disrupt the existing industries, and because they have the term called disintermediation. So in the past, we'll have the middleman, usually has several layers to send the contents or the products to the users or the consumers. But right now, after digital become the dominant forms, like we watch videos can directly on the website or directly from a mobile phone. We don't really have the so-called we don't have to wait. That's this intermediation meanings, right? Like YouTube, they disrupt past models that always have the elites to do the gatekeeping and then to select certain content and then to put it in the optimal, maybe the content line up each day for you. And thinking about all the young people, minorities should watch TV at a certain time, like 6 o'clock, and maybe housewives should watch a certain content like afternoon. But right now you can watch anytime. If you are just 9 hour, you don't really fulfill that, like from 8 o'clock or 6 o'clock to 12, that kind of broadcasting time. So basically, that's more, how to say that, we can say it's the more prioritized, process, and then it's also can be seen as this intermediation. So traditional form, they tend to be a new competitors if they want to become more relevant or even leading the local markets, then they have to actually attack the existing the established intermediates by offering greater reach and less richness. So what does it mean is that if in the traditional way, I want to join a market, so basically they have to think about we need to expand the reach, and the reach will be more important, and the richness will be something come afterwards. But right now, they don't need to think about that. They could be more radical because in the current form, like internet, they can provide reach and the richness at the same time. So they can be in the multimedia form and they can reach global audiences. And we don't need to really think about which should come first and whether that has a middleman to help us to establish reach first or richness first, because reach will be the market share. So usually that will be the first step. So the radical forms, actually place the direct threats to the established business model. So it's a kind of transformation for us to actually consider. So now we move to the next part, is called talk about regulatory convergence. In the past, the media forms looks like the zero structures. And now we actually merge into the multiple platform products and services. And we need to think about, so how to make the policies in response to the rapid change of the new technology advancements. At the same time, we also have to keep public interest in mind. Okay, because usually regulations lag behind the technological advancements. So when we keep chasing about the rapid development of the new technologies and new media, we cannot keep changing the regulations. So we need to think first and then make the regulations will apply to the majority of the public. So we won't be like a spontaneously, to make certain policy and say, no, it won't. We have to change because the OTT have turned into a different market directions, right? So you remember when we talked about OTT last year, we have some regulations and then we sort of feeling the importance to like the foreign OTT has been maybe cast out in a certain way, like China's own OTT, because they have some issues in terms of, I don't know, they talk about, it's like more like if they have the legitimate companies, proxy companies in Taiwan, or if they cannot, and they cannot be registered, so they cannot be accountable if there are other things that they need to fulfill. So iQIYI or Tencent have other kinds of branding of the OTT. They cannot be registered in Taiwan. So they, even though in the past they have been they have the commissioning companies go OTT, right? OTT, right? Yeah. So basically what I'm saying is that when new technologies come, they converge and then bring the political challenges, because they need to think about first, how do we perceive the new technologies, and what kind of characteristics that we need to make the most salient considerations. Like we talk about mobile broadcasting TV. So is that TV, or is that mobile, or is that broadcasting? And the question started from IPTV or even earlier. So we have the internet, we have TV. So if you were the regulator when these new species just appear, how do you perceive the new media? And how can you think about any because when you define, you will think about certain way to regulate it. If it's TV, certainly it's about content. So you will more focusing on concerning about the minority and concerning about certain must carry law, and there are different kinds of considerations. But if you are talking about the internet is more light touched, and it's more open culture. So basically, you will think it's more pro innovation. There won't be too much like licensing issues for the internet operators. Maybe just the few ISPs, but for the small like online companies, online websites, we don't need to register, right? Like Singapore, they have some regulations. I think perhaps in 2013 or 14, they asked the certain website if they are talking about political issues and news, and they have certain amounts of subscribers, they have to be registered. So after you have been registered means you have to be monitored, and you will have some responsibilities. So this actually changed the whole game, So what I'm saying is that it's very important to start to thinking about what kind of content and what kind of conduit and how to define this kind of merging media, and then thinking about how to regulate them, okay? So there's lots of issues like content ownership, and control, and who actually can access to the media, actually also influencing how we regulate the media. So if you have some new media which has the mass market, then certainly it has to be, you have to consider maybe they need to have more responsibilities and more regulation upon them. But if that's only niche market, only small number of people, and they are interested in the content, and it won't actually cause a very huge influences. Maybe you can be more like loose, in terms of regulation. So basically, these are the things you have to think about, like mobility, privacy, or diversities, and also copyright issues. There are lots of different kinds of thoughts. So regulatory convergence will lead to the media industry convergence. So I think we don't have the doubts about this, right? If they don't loosen up the regulations in 1996 Telecom Act, then none of the business can cross over. So the telecom companies won't be able to enter the TV stations or the media businesses. But why? You can ask yourself why they want to loosen up this regulation. In the very beginning, they need to have a monopoly like AT&T, these kind of companies. And the media actually, they work pretty fine. Like TV stations that can be on its own, and radio, they have no issues. They have to, have some crossover or influencing each other. But after the internet appeared, and they do consider internet as something has a global influence. I think they have the vision. I mean, U.S. has the vision that internet could be something that they can sell the soft power or lots of, maybe democracy to the whole world. And they also foresee there will be competition. If there will be competition, there won't be locally or regionally. There could be global competition. So if you don't actually allow this crossover, that the people, they can form the alliances, they can be stronger, bigger, then they cannot face this kind of future competition. So we can also see some of these like conglomerates formed in China. Yeah. So China also have like a Hunan Weishi, have the Hunan Jituan, or different kinds of Jiangzhe Jituan. They have lots of conglomerates, and on not just TV station, satellite TV, but also radio, newspaper, and other companies, because they want to have a huge flagship. They can compete with the global, unforeseen future. So if they merge, they'll have the benefits of the reduced cost, the synergy, and also they can increase the media revenues. But still, people worry about the diverse voices. Will they be influenced or be cut down? And that's another important concept, talking about like internet governance. When we have the internet, then it's not just a local issue, it's a global issue. Even the domain name has to be negotiated. And we may wonder why, Taiwan must have the TW in the end when US doesn't have to. Or some country, they don't even have their domain. They just attach to other countries because they are too small. So there are lots of things, even starting from how to name your territories. And also, now we have copyright issue. Copyright issues also will be flowing, it's like flowing through the different countries. And then you need to negotiate with other countries about what is the copyright and how to govern your copyright. So the governments need to talk to each other, how they actually can, in their countries, and then to deal with certain issues like Facebook, right? We know Facebook has a global appearance and lots of subscribers or users. So basically, when they want to make something about the community of practices, they need to consider each country. But to make a common, common codes for every countries can actually under that process. So I has been also interviewed one time talking about certain content issue about cyberbullying, yeah, and then or so there are some terms in terms of how looking at different cases, and then whether consider that has some rules can apply to Asian countries or consider of other countries. So what I'm saying is that so internet governance is a big issue. So basically, it's not just our countries can make certain things on our own. We need to negotiate it. What actually will be appear in our country and other global society. So there will be norms, there will be decision-making process, there are lots of negotiations, there will be some co-regulations. So we need to think about lots of different kind of issues, including infrastructures, managements, and how to use of the internet, cyberbullying, cyber crime, or some of the negative sides. Or we need to negotiate with the digital divide, because other countries may not, like African countries, they join the information society. In fact, after the mobile phone, when we happily use our computer and then connect to the internet, they did not actually have that stage. Suddenly, they can join the global internet governance because many people can afford a smaller device, the mobile phone, or even several people own a smartphone together to make some businesses or some coordination or communication. So these kind of developmental issues will be in the third world, and in different kinds of countries. They have to discuss together because that's a cultural or context specific issues. And finally, I think platform issues is what we concern most right now. We discuss a lot. So whether we still can consider Facebook, Google, these big technological companies as pipeline. So pipeline means they don't deal with any content. So in the past, they consider themselves as a pipeline, so they don't need to, they can get away with lots of responsibilities of maybe hate speech, ISIS, terrorism, because they don't monitor the content. So when I interview like a line, yeah, in terms of the social bots issue, they will also say we did not monitor whatever conversation content is because we encrypted everything. So we only send and make sure everyone in the receiver will receive whatever, but we don't record anything in between. So pipeline means I provide the channel, all the rooms for you to make anything possible upon our platform. However, I don't monitor or I don't intervene any of the content, so I won't be accountable for these kind of things. I won't need to take the responsibilities. But it's harder to actually that like Facebook to get away, or especially Facebook, those media that people produce content, because after they have the live broadcasting, remember there are certain cases, young people commit suicide, or a young father hang himself in front of the child in Thailand. There are many cases. I think they keep explaining, okay, if I have the new technologies, and what would be the way I can monitor to notify, or I can take down certain inappropriate content. So these will not be only pipeline. These are something related to publishers. And they also admit they have the moderators, human moderators. They use AI to screening like 99% of the content. But after AI, they have human. So these definitely not pipeline. So who actually, I mean, if it's a giant global companies, who actually can make the regulations apply to, to ask the giant to obey. Maybe EU has done something. They're still working on it, like Digital Service Act and different kind of things. And when I attend one of the forum, they share, it's like EU, they definitely will invest a lot of time to negotiate and discuss with the giant tech firms and then tell them what they want and then negotiate. But as a small country like Taiwan or maybe Singapore or even Malaysia, so how could we actually have such influence? Yeah, so maybe we have to join something like ASEAN or different kinds of organizations, international organizations. Okay, so we end the regulation and then we will have a break. So the next term is called net neutrality. Are you familiar with this or have you heard of it? Okay, so what does it mean?
Is it the difference between the quality of the internet between different areas should be the same?
Not really. Not area. Who want to try again? Okay, when we first have the internet, everyone consider it's free, right? Because there's no much content, and it's built up like a certain like channel for people to add up the content. And after the technology advanced, and then we have better bandwidth, and then we have a faster transmission power, and so on and so forth. So from text to audio, video, anything now can be on the internet, right? But each of them, the different media form, they take up different space, bandwidth. They actually consume different energy, right? So if you have a video company, like if you were OTT company, it's called free rider. It's like on the top of the infrastructures built by certain telcos or ISP. But you will take a lot of bandwidth because you offer videos. Yeah, right? So in the very beginning, they feel like if the company, not individual, okay, but mostly to company, they own a very bandwidth consuming businesses and they should pay more. Okay, they should pay more for that kind of usage, or they cannot have the same speed. So there will be some discrimination to that kind of company that says why we were discriminating. We are just one of them, right? But to those people who build up the super highway or pipeline, they feel like why you did not pay anything, but I own and I pay, I maintain, and you certainly has to contribute. So basically, this is the arguments. But the arguments, they need to balance the commerce, culture, and connectivity. So because internet is a free culture, we are free, we shouldn't discriminate anyone. Everyone should have the same access to the internet, right? So if I own a company, you shouldn't differentiate me from other companies. So they argue like this. So the FCC in the beginning will more like back up this kind of thoughts. But later on, it depends on who actually dominates the government. Like Republicans, they will be more pro the businesses. They could actually will support something like we can do some differentiation. Okay, so the first case will be 25. AT&T, they also have some arguments. AT&T is the telcos in US, so they said Vantage and the Googles, they have certain businesses. They shouldn't, take it for free. They should pay something. And then later on, Comcast in 2007, it's a cable network. So basically, they provide a cable broadband. It's instead of like AT&T, it's a telco. But they have the competitor like BitTorrent, which has the peer-to-peer like a free video, right? Also use their own pipeline and then to offer this kind of business. So they feel like we shouldn't, torrent such a things. We should ask them to pay more, also down the speed, but did not get the support from FCC because it think everything's on the internet should be considered as the IS service. So you shouldn't differentiate and shouldn't discriminate any of the business or companies. So here is the slides actually is talking about in 2018, there's a flip of thoughts. Because remember, that's Trump dominance, the new government. So they start to talk about net neutralities and then think they should have something different. Okay, So that's some of the turf war between President Clinton, Republicans, and lots of different kinds of people to do this negotiation. So at new FCC, they feel like they cannot justify to, but eventually the new FCC, they still think they cannot justify the new commission's reason to actually abolish the long-term standings policy. So they still support net neutrality. So, but there's lots of arguments and then lots of turf wars and people negotiate and conflicts, interests involved in the business or in the negotiation. Okay, so you can see there are two camps like Netflix, Facebook, Reddit, and Internet Association. They have, at certain signs, and some bigger companies they may have different arguments. And California has more of the content providers. They feel like they will certainly support all regulations. They shouldn't be discriminated. So yeah. Okay. Here we keep talking about IPTV and mobile TV, I think in the previous class. So I just want to tell you these two are something actually can be a great examples for you to think about if you were the regulators. What in the very beginning when you saw them, would you think it's internet businesses or TV businesses, mobile businesses or TV businesses? Because the definitions or the how you perceive them will actually significantly influencing how you want to regulate them. Okay, so we have lots of new TV likes, medium, and actually they bring the challenges to the regulators, but they are different species. So we cannot say because it has TV and everything should be considered as TVs. And so we need to learn from the ancestors. Means when we're looking at a mobile broadcasting TV, we're thinking about IPTV. Or so IPTV was something like internet TV at that stage, and then it actually set some precedent then for us to consider in terms of the licensing, content regulations, or copyright issue. We talk about content and the conduit. Because there are too many things to be considered, it would be good if we put content and conduit as a separate parts to consider, take into account. So that's lots of complex regulations. So that's why, like Korean, they have the convergent commissions like KCC, because they think with a convergent regulator, they can better think about the full picture instead of has their own perspectives to think for the telcos as the more important business or the so-called content TV stations, so they can put together. Okay. So if we're looking at KCC, then they have two tiers framework, which means basically different size of the market. If your branding achieve a certain amount of subscribers, they will fulfill tighter regulations. But if a smaller number is more loosened regulations, they also consider net neutrality that we have talked about. But instead, in addition to them, they also need to think about how to regulate the content based on social cultural issues and economic issues. Because you have the business, I mean, media is also considered mostly businesses, right? So you have to protect their growth and the revenues. And like in Korea, they would like to think about the global influence and global market. So it's not just domestic. So definitely they have to consider the economic values. But at the same time, they also have the cultural issues, the social issues. Would you like to promote your soft powers outside of your country or market? And do you consider certain, if some like a violent content actually, or like horror movies actually, or something horror, or in terms of crime, that's a good like a suspension content that will appear to the market, yet it may not actually protect some minority or certain people. That's a social cultural considerations for the other end. So what kind of thing you want to develop? Is that only for business? Or you have to think about minority or your local culture's protections. So these are the two things you need to consider. Okay, finally, I think that's another thought about platform neutrality. So we talk about, some people will suggest we're looking at the content and the platform separately. So meaning for different kinds of content, we have different regulation. For different platforms, we will have different regulation. But eventually, ALRC is the Australian regulators. They think that will be too cumbersome and not so easy to respond to the fast change of the technologies and future uncertainties. They think we need to not consider or minimize the platform distinction and focusing on the content classification first, okay? Because they think content make most differences. Like the multi-stream TV regulations, I have one papers in telecommunication policies. I would say there are lots of different ways to regulate in content in terms of whether it's linear content or non-linear content. Like in EU, they have different kinds of thoughts. And the linear one will have, I think, tighter regulation because it's applied to free-to-air or anything. But other countries may not really use this kind of separation. And competition is an issue. So we need to think, like US, they consider a global market. Like Facebook, this kind of companies, they will prefer to use the self-regulation, or they can have their moderators. But instead of have the co-regulations with the local government or even soft law. But in Australia, because Facebook or Google did not own by them, so they have different ways of thinking. That EU certainly also will say, we have the right to be forgotten, right? So Google, in one case happening in the EU, actually support that thought because one guy, I think he met some long time ago, committed some crime, and his name would be searchable with the very powerful Google technologies. So he filed to the court and said, I don't want to be found. Okay, so basically he has committed the crime, but still, eventually EU respected the digital human right. So his name after that would be removed and not searchable on the Google network. So that's called the right to be forgotten. Yeah. So even though it's a confirmed, stories and have the call records and the news reports, anything, but still you can have that. So what I'm saying is that that's very contextual in terms of different markets, okay, and copyright issues also. Well, okay, I think I will just give the slides before we go to the break. So in my multi-stream TV convergence and regulation paper, I argue for any nascent media, the new media, if we want to facilitate or foster its development or growth, we shouldn't have very tight control, that kind of regulation. In the very beginning, when it's still very small, we need to have a pro-innovation type of approach. And then with the light touch licensing scheme, because you can, these new business, the new media, they have a lot of challenges and uncertainty, right? They have to face different competitions. So if we have very light touch licensing scheme can help them to kickstart. And in terms of content regulation, they will have, I would say, limited influence on the broad mass market. So we don't need to regulate that strict in terms of content. So there are lots of conflicts, and the government should actually play a very important role to developing this multi-stream TV because it's cross-platform, cross different content, lots of business involved. If the government did not play a part like a bridge in between, it's very hard for them to negotiate with each other. There is no successful models, and there's no one model for every market. But I will propose the way to think about, there are 4 different kinds of regulation, but how to consider which media put into the 4 different kinds based on 2 criteria. The first one is how to think about the social cultural concerns and economic concerns that we talked about earlier. Okay, so the other one is how to respond to changes and the feedback. So the policy regulator need to balance the 2 parts, because we need to respond to the fast changes and the evolving changes, and then we still need to balance about the social, cultural, and economic concerns. So I would say the platform neutrality will be something I also will support. And in terms of the conduits, what kind of technologies they want to use, what kind of standards, anything, actually, I think businesses or industry operators, they can choose their own preferred ways to do the businesses. However, in terms of the content, they should have some clarification, because content matters a lot. So different contents, there are 4 categories, classifications. So there are 2, okay, did I have? Okay, so here has it. It's easier to understand. So there are 4 types. Okay, for the left-hand side, we have, this is called social cultural impact. So basically, if you are the broadcasting or mass market companies, you belong to different categories from the VOD or niche market, because you have different reach, you have different influence to the market. And the other side is in terms of the content. So content production mode or aggregation mode also have 2 different ways to think, because in the past, we only have more like traditional way is the gatekeeping mechanism. We have an elite actually control what we think, how we actually think, because they produce certain content and put it in certain orders for us. But we have participatory culture right now. So it's not limited to the so-called journalists or the producers, but ordinary people. So for the participatory, like YouTube culture or mechanism, we shouldn't have very time regulation. It should be self-regulation, like touch licensing, like mobile TV or internet TV. Okay, so based on the categories, we can think which parts of the TV businesses should put into different kinds of regulation. Okay, so I will just leave the page here, and you can think about in Taiwan or any countries you are familiar with. Maybe, I think it's easier to think about the gatekeeping mechanism. They are the old type of, TV services. So you may think about the type 3 or type 4. What kind of TV services could put into that box or that cell? Okay, so we can have a 10 minutes break before we come back, and you can think about this. So did you think about any example for the type 3 and the type 4 cell? Like, you know, the type of TV actually fulfill the broadcasting mass market, but at the same time mostly use the participatory mechanism. So we suggest they can have some like a subscription TV content regulation or less strict licensing. Could you think about anything? Perhaps like OTT right now? Because like YouTube, we still will think it should be, even though it's influencing lots of people in terms of subscriber size, yet it's more for the video on demand. It doesn't mean the video will reach the same amount of people at the same time, you know. So it has the variations, have lots of niche videos, long tail and anything. So it will be in the category 4. Yeah. Or we can say maybe Clubhouse, if it's not video, okay. But Clubhouse is kind of new media. When it appear, it's more, thank you, the user generate content and can be light touch and self-regulation. Okay, all right.
Is
Uh-huh.
TikTok a kind of TV or is it social media?
I think you can put it in a broader category. I think can be considered a video, right? Video will be TV. So I mean, new TV means not the TV, you know. So if TikTok, which one you think should be placed? Should be type 3 or type 4?
Maybe 4.
Why?
Because it's not, it's on demand and probably niche market.
Okay, so it doesn't really have like one program like broadcasting and can reach millions of people or more than 10K or 100K of people. Okay, all right. So it's just providing a way of looking at the certain very different but very complex type of the new TVs and how we think about how to regulate them. And for me, I just looking at in the past when we regulate, we may consider these two as a very important things. Like social cultural impact and content wise is in terms of the model. And then they could serve one of the, you know, framework for people to look at different perspectives. So, okay, the organizational media, they also have these kind of converge, right? Not just the industry. So in terms of ownership, they can merge together. They need to think about how actually can merge together, right? And when they merge, there are some tactics will be changed. Like if the TV companies merge with the website, they may have something like a web versions. And so in terms of the content marketing, the revenues, these kind of things they need to negotiate with each other. And structure, because two companies come together, they may not really have a truly convergent. What I'm saying is converged because they may not own the, you know, in the same space and they did not talk to each other. They may just work, you know, separately. Then in terms of convergence means web versions means they just put things together on the website, like TV, newspaper, any medium. They would just do this, but they still protect or maintain their own cultures and ways of doing things. But if we talk about structure, means they has shaped some of the departments or organizational structures to put like special teams together. Like in MediaCorp in Singapore, I think several years ago, they want to try this kind of organizational convergence. They just put different news bits like sports, entertainment, and you know, maybe hot news or political bits. They would draw the different people together from radio and the televisions or newspaper and put it in the same hub. And think this special task group actually can have better, convergent experiments together. And those people, they later on also encounter some difficulties because they need to listen to the hub, has some leaders or those people, director of the hub, or they have to listen to the original news bits. They also have the struggles in terms of too many people give them order. They don't know how to prioritize certain things. So if you want to shape the culture or shape the structure, then it's very radical, aggressive changes. Then you need to think about how to make people work in a way they understand what will be the most important goals and the effects they want to achieve or produce. Okay, so they also have something interesting like information gatherings ways. Like we mentioned, Eastern TV will be something they share the information when they gathered from TV station, or that has a term in the past called backpack journalism, or called VJ in BBC. So basically, those people, it's one for all, meaning you did everything by yourself. You carry your camera and the radio or anything, and you cover the news, one person station, okay? So you make everything produced just by yourself. So that fulfill the convergence in terms of information gathering and processing, okay? And finally has the presentation, meaning you can have different ways to present your content, but in the organizations, they could have the so-called the transmedia storytelling or multimedia storytelling. And finally, I think to the very successful convergence in, when you place the different organizations together, they definitely need to have some cultural and the practices converge. What I mean is that just consider when you are a TV news reporter, I used to work in TV station, then we have to cover lots of, in addition to what happened in that press conference, for instance, we still need lots of videos, and we cannot just show people the very boring press conference and then say, oh, that's all. Okay. If they're talking about, for instance, the COVID-19, we need to film certain like COVID-19 vaccine, we need to go to different places to have the footage. And then we can make the visual more, relevant or more appealing to the audiences. Okay. And also we may need to cover different kinds of stories and then to have the balancing. So usually the TV reporters, we have to fulfill like the noon news and the afternoon, the 6 o'clock, the prime time. So before that, you do everything cover and then you have to also editing. So you have to rush back. So you couldn't really stay until the last minute to hear the whole story or make it, you just cannot, because you have optimal mission is to produce the video stories. But if you are reporters from the newspaper, you can carry your laptop and then you will just, listen and type and then transmit very fast, through the internet. You can get your story out. Sometimes you will take some pictures and later on people may ask you to do smartphone, video for some like a real time, record or something. But what I'm saying is that they don't really see eye to eye to each other when they work together, because the newspaper journalists tend to think the TV reporter has no depth. They are superficial. They all look good, and then they have very shallow understanding of the story, and they just run back. And because they only have a small clip, like 2 to 3 minutes to cover what's happening. But for the newspapers, they have lots of background to check, historical, and then different multiple stakeholders to cover. But for the TV stations, they will feel like, why newspaper? So I had just one, very, very boring text presentations. They have certain culture. They don't see eye to eye. So if you want to truly merge the two teams, even they are all related to news, it's not so easy, okay? So consider the corporate strategies, why the organizational convergence should happen or could happen. And also there are different kind of technologies to make it happen, and whether there are good benefits like marketing efforts can cross-platform to do this kind of promotions. And there was some like expectation in the past when you converge, meaning the person or the talents that you recruit should do everything or good at everything, but none of the so-called fantasy of the personal convergence skills or the multitasking could actually become very successful, because the past experiments, they show the turnover rate of the news will be slowed down. If you want one person to do everything, so they cannot cover very fast and the so-called hot news, they will tend to change into more feature story. Yeah. And then, so the BBC's, like some experiments, they have this kind of more in-depth and then slow, circulations in terms of the stories. Okay, so you have to actually see the pro and cons and have the balance. If you want, more backpack journalists, the one for all for one, or you want to have the many people work together, that kind of model. So the storytelling certainly have different ways to, have this conversion. So right now we, in the past, like TV news will have animation groups, we have CG groups, and like Yahoo TV, right now they have the Yahoo TV Lab. They will have the so-called AR group, VR group, or they can do things like a VTuber or mixed reality. So meaning the storytellings, you could have different ways to actually show what you want to convey to the audiences, but may not belong to just the traditional one group. They have to have work from different segments of the organization, like the traditional, like in the sub, they will have the directors, right? So the directors still need to know what she used to do. At the same time, need to negotiate with the, like in Yahoo TV, negotiate with the so-called TV lab people. They have different AR technologies and how it actually can show up on the screen while, the program has been recorded. So that's a so-called negotiation. But there are also other stakeholders, if they know this technology, how the technology can be put into the content, the ideas, the planning. So there are different ways to have this convergent. Okay, so some observation. Communication definitely matter a lot because you will involve lots of changes and transformation. So people need to know why we need to converge and how we are going to converge, and a lot of other issues. If you cannot have a successful, effective communication, usually they will have a team to actually trigger or lead these convergent processes. Okay, and commitment is also important. So commitment will be backed up by the top management. So if the CEO, the president, or the news director, they support, okay, definitely we need to push the newsroom, digitizations, and then there will be convergence from different, maybe change the roles of the certain people, or what our process need to be shaped. The production ways will be also transformed in certain other, like from tape to something like digital files. So it requires lots of commitment. Okay, and lots of cooperation, which is definitely people need to work together. And what is compensation? Compensation means if you were the champion of the change of the so-called convergent transformation, then you will be recognized, and then maybe give you some recognitions like with promotion or some of the monetary rewards, and let people know you are the model, the role model for everyone to follow. Okay, that will be compensation. But also negatively, if you couldn't do it, there will be something punishment also follow. Okay, so culture changes. When I talk about TV and newspaper journalists, they have different cultures. If they want to seriously work together as a team. They need to overcome, they have different deadline. They have different ways of production. And certainly they need to have the empathy about each other's requirements and provide what actually can improve the other side's, the news storytelling. So that needs not just sitting together in the editorial meetings, but at the same time, they need to go to the field and see who is good at what. So if optimal process will be the newspaper journalists, they don't have the deadline, editing and the kind of technical requirements. They can stay at the side. Maybe at the last moment, there are some like a breaking changes, right? There are something important being announced or happening in the site. They can pass what's happening to the TV reporters and can add into the script or at least put into the news lead for the anchor. So there are lots of things they can do together if they understand each other, they want to work together, but none of this could happen if there will be no communication, no commitment, no cooperation, and no other compensation or encouragement. Yeah. And finally, they still have a competition. If they, like I said, TV, if the newspaper journalists in the same conglomerates feel like, oh, this is very like exclusive because I only have it. And now if I pass to the TV reporter, then immediately at noon, it will become on the air. So I cannot own that scoop because the paper will be only published the next day. Or even the website perhaps will be also have less reach than the broadcasting TV's power. So they may have some competition and they may not want that synergy effect to be more optimal to the whole company. So there are lots of things. And also finally, also more important, very important is the user audiences and customers. Yeah. Okay. So for the future, still convergence still happening, evolving, and then it's not have one like a panacea. It's like one solution for everyone. Okay, there's no, and in each convergence they have different adjustments and challenges, and also different outcomes. Okay, convergence will have the system and technology to begin with, and then they will help the cross-platform distribution. They will increase the economies of scale and then also reduce, it's kind of reduce some of the resources and then will become more like synergy effects happening. And something negative is that they worry whether the voices will be compromised. Yeah. Okay. So other things we need to also consider is that right now we are actually situated in a data age. So when we talk about media in the past, it's like content, right? So content also will be data. The data could be a smaller units like our personal data, our preferences, and it's more like personal data will be bigger issues in terms of privacy and security. Okay, and our content actually owned by whom? So who actually will have the copyright? So these are the things we can think about. Okay. So any questions for the media conversion part? Okay. If you don't have any questions, I think we can look at this next part. So according to our syllabus, the week 5, we are going to talk about the so-called multi-screen social TV and dual screening. And we will have 2 weeks. One is about multi-screen, the other is about social TV and dual screening. But I think it's a convergence. So basically, I will just talk about them in the sequence I feel it fits, okay? And I noticed one group would like to actually propose a topic about social TV as your research proposal for this semester. So I will mention some of them and before we actually go into the proposal discussion or topic discussion. So, okay, basically, it's a multi-screen world. Nobody can deny right now, right? And then long time ago, like Google has done this. I think in 2012, you may not even notice the trend. And they have noticed that and said 90% of the media content has occurred or appeared on the screen. Okay, so just 10% outside of screen. So, but I don't know about the future world. If looking at Microsoft's forecast, there will be appear lots on the screen, like the glass and the table and the electronic paper. They still have some medium. But if we looking at holographic technologies, they will be projecting in the air. So they may not have the screen in the future. But no matter what, multi-screen means in the past, the content will fix on certain medium, but now it could happen anywhere. Yeah. Okay. So it's very prevalent situation, and the consumptions happen more to the mobile because mobile is one for all device, and then it actually being with us everywhere, right? So we feel very attached to the phone. Do you think so? Now, in the past, like in Singapore, I was, if you lost your laptop and your personal phone, like a smartphone now, which one you feel more worried and immediately you would like to find where it is? Uh, so something like laptop, related to laptop, you think you will be more worried? Raise your hand now.
Laptop or
Laptop or your phone, smartphone. How to design?
I think I'm more worried about smartphone
Okay, why?
because you can contact other people with the phone
Uh-huh.
directly, immediately.
Yeah, because
And
uh-huh,
on your phone you got the
personal photos, lots of details. Is
Yeah.
that? Yeah, I think because the phone now we actually can contain lots of things, and it's like not just for work, not just for personal purposes. There are so many things there. Yeah, so, even though we have the iCloud maybe backup sometimes, but they won't have everything. So if we lose it and we did not have the backup, first of all, you lost very precious memories. And in terms of personal privacy issues, there are some things you don't want to reveal to the world, only to you, or just those people who actually happening related to that event. So they will be also in the phone because a laptop will be more work related. Yeah. So to me, I think the importance of smartphone become increasing year after year. And also because it has a strong, it has different functions, actually fulfill different purposes, like the purchasing power. After we check certain type of products, and more likely you will just have the impulsive purchase. And if we check, and then phone can actually do it right away. Like now we talk about Uber Eats, and it's so easy. Sometimes you don't even consider too much, and then immediately on the tip of your fingers you just make it happen. Okay, but still if we like to enjoy the audio visual effects, we still will think maybe TV screen is a good selection. Okay, so here is a video talking about multi-screen TV. I think it actually everyone will have different perception, just like when we talk about new technologies, especially in the very beginning, because may have they are from different businesses, and then they have different mentalities, or they want to promote certain things differently. Okay, so they all have different perspective, right? But I think I think the end point of the video is very important. It's talking about basically it's getting more importance instead of in the very beginning they talk about the so-called TV is dead. TV is not dead. TV is everywhere. Okay, so what did you actually think the more important parts appearing from the video? You think actually happening or is a very important trend for the multi-screen TV? What do you think? They have lots of keywords like talking about smart TV, they're talking about customized, tailored, and then it's like whatever you want to watch will have different size of screens to suit your needs. And so that's a lady talking about if I want to watch more personal content, then I will use the smaller screen. But if I want to enjoy socially with many people, then bigger screen could be better. So I think we will choose whatever screen that suit our needs at the time and place that we want. Yeah. Anything you feel like catch your attention, or later on you can talk about it. Okay. All right. So content driven, definitely TV is very, very important to content driven because no matter what kind of size or what kind of platform they show in the content, definitely when we say TV, we need to enjoy the videos. And before so-called integration or capable to have the multi-screen, we need to have lots of cloud content to transmit into our device, no matter which device that we prefer to have the content at that moment. And so these kind of devices, they need to have the concepts interoperable capabilities. They have to work together, as we said earlier. And the service providers, they need to also negotiate with each other whenever my content appear on which platform, which device, and then will they have some bundle service? We need to thinking about repackaging, and we need to thinking about if different brands, like different OTT brands or operators, they need to negotiate and then differentiate their content, right? The reason why you subscribe Netflix, I think definitely will be different from maybe live TV because they have different lineup for you, or different kinds of products. They have the substitute possibilities. Okay, so that we need to be thinking about cross-platform strategies. And I think in the video, they also talk about, it seems like we have lots of times actually in between can be fulfilled by this, multi-screen experiences. So we have lots of micro moments. In these micro moments, we can engage on the mobile activities or do online shopping or different kind of small like short video watching. So they call it fun time. In the past, when we don't have it, we probably would just idle or just waiting for something to happen. And so the multi-screen can be a time filter, and also we can add lots of complementary information to the content. And but when we use lots of different screens, we may also have some problems of like short attention span, and also we may be overwhelmed by the cognitive informations, that appear on cross platforms. Okay, there are some other companies that will do research and they find out different types of people. They have different selection or preferences of the multi-screen, like the generation-wise, or can looking at the task characteristics or the load of the cognitive. So basically, here it said if those people, they are younger generations like you, maybe they will prefer to use more smartphone because it's more light touch and high frequency. Yeah. And if you want to change to older generation, I think in Taiwan they still rely, the senior citizens, They still rely on the smartphone, but here it said the older generation is those people still working, or maybe take up a high position in companies. They will prefer to have a joint mode, to have the smartphone at the top, because smartphone is still not an ideal device to deal with very complex, work like calculation or your thesis writing. You will still want your laptop. Okay, so it's related to the also not just age, but also the task, I would say task characteristics and how much work need to be done by the different kinds of devices. Okay. Millennials, there was a millennial tend to be the generation of the digital native, and they would like to have the multi-screen as their norm. And then we have a lot of, market reports or the research to support, this statement. And they also have very limited and selective attention span, spending to any kind of devices. Okay, so marketers need to catch their attention. So they need to really thinking about how to do this kind of responsive design. And now it's very interesting. They have some skills like, okay, we have the cross platform, we have the multi-screens. If my target audience can quickly shift from A to B to C platform, how do I capture that? They can have the audio recognition technologies. So basically, when I move my eyesight from the TV, but the sound can trigger whatever happening in your phone. So even though you change your attention from TV, because they have recognition of the voices or the audio, they can trigger something else, and then you can still be captured simultaneously on other platforms. So they're thinking about what's the possibilities to always keep you on whatever they want you to watch, okay? And there are different papers analyzing their patterns of the multi-screen. Like there are 6 different kinds of multi-screen. I found one paper and said, okay, mirroring, meaning you will have all the contents actually similar to whatever happening because you want them to look the same, alike or the same. Okay, shifting is more like when I leave my house, I'm going to take the content with me immediately if I watch it on TV and then transport into my mobile phone or maybe the tablet or anything. Complementaries will be some patterns that when you watch a screen and you will need something to complement what's happening there. Sometimes you use the B screen to do information searching, or you will do some maybe it's something like you watch the video, has some products and you want to purchase. So there will be additional things you do to complement what's happening on the main screen. Coherence is something actually triggered or supported by the producers. They would like to make something like a transmedia concept. They put the 4 different types of content actually on different platforms. Okay, so you will actually get something from the second screen app to support what's the characters' mysteries or behind the scene, or like a video, they will have something like that. So video is set TV. They have this kind of OTT platform. Do you know that? Or called Vidol, VIDOL. Vidol. Okay. So Vidol is belonging to the broadcasting TV, is the OTT branding in Taiwan, but they will also have such content actually only exclusive appear on that OTT, and mostly they're behind the scene of their very popular dramas or anything related to their content. But on the airing time, that's a fixed time slot, right? You won't be able to add anything, because there will be only the story. And then beside the story, you would like to know more about the characters or even the real actors, how they interact with each other in the shooting site or whatever. So these will become the scoops. And then important things like webisodes happening on the OTT. So that's one example for the so-called coherence. So you will have the main drama appearing on the cable TV channel or the broadcasting channel, and then you will have the OTT actually have some OTT exclusive content. Okay, so it could be on the app, and maybe on the website also have some stories about that TV program or drama, and maybe there are some features about specific actors or the script writers. They have some ideas or some inspirations. So you can think about what should happen in which parts. If one serious fans or many serious fans get interested in these TV dramas, they won't mind to go over different places to understand more. It's like a puzzle to put them together. So that's a coherence. But it won't happen if you don't match these contents on different parts of the medium. Okay, partition will be, you can split the content into 3 different segments or 3 devices, but it also has to be supported by the producers. Otherwise, it cannot. Same thing in aggregation. Okay, but that's some technical parts. Okay, so most useful or helpful or most frequent patterns of the multi-screen usually happening in the shifting and the complementary. Okay. All right, so what's social TV? I think we did mention about that, right? Did we? What's social TV? No? Have you heard of social TV? You did write about social TV, right? So what's your definition of social TV that Esther and Rona, you feel like?
I think it's you watch a TV program and then you discuss with other people or share your opinion on social media.
Okay, so first you will have TV, right? So you will have a video screen as a primary, and so you're watching the video, and at the same time you would like to also communicate about what's happening related to the video or do something related to the video. So maybe on the social media. So it has the socialization purposes. So it's called social TV.
Yeah, I have a question. Social TV has to be dual screening simultaneously, or it can be separately in different times.
Okay, that's a good question. But usually, when you say simultaneously, not necessarily happening right away or next to each other. But if you want to consider it's a social TV, then they have to have some connection in terms of video watching and the social media use for no matter it's the communication or information seeking. Yeah, so they won't be too much like time apart. That's what I'm saying. It won't be like a real time using 2 screens together to be classified as social TV. But you won't like put it on and keep watching. And sometimes you may go cooking or do something, and then you come back. Okay, I think about, there's something interesting because you watch it and you can do some information seeking. I think in a broader definitions, they're still related to the social TV behavior, right? Okay, did I answer your question? It has the relation, but not necessarily a simultaneous. Okay, yeah. So when 2010 MIT review select STV is the social TV as the so-called top most influential technologies. Basically, they are talking about social TV system. They are not talking about the social TV that we mentioned or we actually define right now. So what does it mean? Because they have fantasized there will be a TV system, integrated system. So they have the video playing there, they have the social media channel, or the channels with a multi-mode can have audio, text, or video, let people to communicate and then interact, maybe related to the video. So that's the views. So if you're looking at the past studies, there are lots of articles, especially from engineering disciplines. They have produced lots of papers about social TV system. And this kind of systems, they tend to be the experimental based. So they will have few people testing the system and they produce and try to analyzing whether they use audio or the video or text will be more preferred mode to do this kind of communication or socialization. Okay. However, in 2012, then the so-called social TV has a different thought, not limited to so-called STV, because they are Twitter appear. So Twitter and become the very like a 14 characters, that kind of text communication. So huge people, when they watch Grammy Awards, they will like to talk to others, but not necessarily because American, they tend to be more individualized and they may not situated in the same space. But with the Twitter channels, they can quickly discuss about what's happening in that show, the live event. They can have some feelings of the co-presence. We are together. We watch the show together, and we can discuss with each other, no matter who you are. But you are the group of people, the community feel interesting in this TV program.
Does the social TV has to be like 2 channels, or can be like when YouTube have the live function and someone is commenting beside the video? Does that also
Okay.
kind of social system?
Okay, so we need to think about what is social TV and not limited it to happening in one system. So when you say YouTube, then that's a social TV. I would say it could be considered a social TV pattern because they will have the live and then throw out some of the hearts or donate and lots of other functions. That I think is more real time. And then I think that's definitely a social TV type. Okay, but what I'm saying is that I'm talking about the background and history about what's social TV. So in the beginning, people imagined as an integrated system, but it did not happen because there has no reason to just subscribe to specific TV system, a so-called STV system, without abundant content. There will be only for the function, and that made no sense. So when they found out, so socialization with social media can definitely help the so-called decreasing TV rating. That was happening. That happened in 2012. So they saw, live TV rating has decreased, more and more. But when they have the live event, a big events like Grammy Awards, people did talk about what's happening and using the Twitter to communicate. And the communication on Twitter help the improvements of the social TV rating, the TV rating. So they say, so this is social TV phenomenon. So that's organic way that the TV producers, they found, that could be one thing that we can do and then to help our rating. Okay. So at that time, they were more into the real-time engagement. So if I want to do this, I'm going to actually boost up the discussions on the Twitter, and then they can help the rating. So here's some definitions. So social TV is the convergence of television and social media, or allow the remote viewers. They socially interact with each other. Could be TV set, could be smartphones, could be tablets or PC. So it's a multi-screen concept. Okay. So when you talk about interact, social, that will be the key important things that we can actually define them. So integrated TV, STV, will be something, they have lots of past studies about that. So it's experimental system that I described just now. And so I will introduce you later on, has one paper that I have worked with the EE professors in NTU. It's called Cloud Social TV System. And when he developed that, I think he won the 2013 Asian Innovative Award for that system. Okay, so we worked together and he developed the second, it's like a 2.0 version for my class. And then we interview lots of potential user. And for the engineering or the system builders, they tend to consider the social science as the icing on the cake. It's like we can do some user study for them. Maybe they don't really know what to do, but that's something good to have. But usually I don't know how much they will consider what we contribute. But it's an interesting project. It's a MIT project actually in Singapore. Okay, so there are some considerations about why people want to develop the STV systems. Like they will have some activities. They have the different modalities of communication or socializations. And they're also thinking about strong time we tie issues and who actually communicates. And then they're also looking at the feelings of presence. Okay, so I have worked with one PhD student of mine, and then we have the systematic review looking at the so-called STV system. And into 2015, and all the papers, they only have 10 exploratory user studies. So meaning they have some user data instead of just describing about what they have built up and the very fancy maybe technologies and the features. They have people testing about their system. That's what I mean. But most of them appear in the lab. So it's a controlled environment. And they have very small sample size, like 10 people or less than that, in 9 countries, mostly. Actually, I think if 9 in Western countries, and the only one in Asia is in Japan. Okay, so that's the background. So you will do some background check about what's happening, and then there will be something important to your related research. So what I described about Grammy Awards and Twitter, that's more like user-driven. So user actually has that kind of behavioral patterns, and so the producer found out what's happening, and later on they develop some strategies to even boost up, the content visibilities on the internet discussion. Okay, so they use Twitter, Facebook for comments, share, and post. These kind of behaviors is called sociability because the environmental setup would be good or useful, for those people, easy to socialize with each other. And the other important concept is the virtual co-viewing. The term is called social presence. Okay, so you feel like those people who are not physically with you, but they feel like watching the video with you together from the distance. It's called social presence. And sociability is the setup for that environment. Online environment can facilitate your socialization purposes or activities. Okay, so they also have the multi-stream consumption, but later on it become producer driven because producer must be smart, right? When they notice a user can organically have that phenomenon, so I should think about how to more skillfully put this kind of social media interaction into my program to trigger their different kinds of video consumption. So they will design into later on we will have like 3 segments, something like when we watch the videos, they have certain strategies, and before they have to retain and then cause some suspension that people would like to watch, have trailer type of social media strategy, and later on to let people still think about what's happening and then maybe contribute to future episode. Okay, so something like a second screen app will be also important for producer to add up additional information. Like this is some episodes that I really homes, I really like it. 福尔摩斯, yeah, Sherlock, 对, okay, Sherlock. And also I like to watch like Walking Dead, and they are also have the second screen app. Could be belonging to one program, could be belonging to one TV network or channel. Okay, depends on what they want to achieve. Okay, so here is a paper. I think there are important things that we can take note. Is there a difference between what the consumer is thinking and how this industry is thinking? So when we notice there's something called audience, like multi-screen video verse, and then we need to think about how to match the two sides, the industry and also the audience. So traditional media, they has been shaped because the multi-screen environment. Yeah, so no matter the audience, the platforms, the audience, the programs, and the screens, they become mobile. They can shift to get in different places. Okay, so that's a term called verse. It's talking about the new patterns of audience exposure and the new business models. Okay, so this paper tried to aim to integrate the multi-screen viewing research, because in the very beginning it appeared from the not academia, it's the industry, right? So how you actually can bring some of the industry insights and then theorizing or become more academia, research. That would be one of the contributions they would like to create such knowledge and shed light on the developments. And they also want to help the media managers to know more about the changing media patterns or landscape. So I think this is the important contribution of that paper, because they try to looking at the possible ways to do the cross-platform video media research. So they will say, okay, if we want to really understand the media, how to measure the so-called media verse, we have to put it into 3 different period of time. So previewing meaning before the program has been shown. Okay, so during viewing and then post viewing will be 3 different time or period of time. So how to measure them? They will, like, during the viewing, of course, time spent, frequency of use, how people or audience engage, or cross-platform use, or what kind of affective responses to the video. Then they can do something like online survey, or they can attach some of the, how say that, technical detection to the biometrics that maybe you feel exciting, or you feel scared, or you are aroused by certain content. And you can also do in-depth interviews or ethnography. So I think these are the things they suggest to do, and then with the important measures or the focus of that measurement. All right, so that's just a few papers actually before I jump into the social TV studies multi-screen. I have actually 2 grants. One is related to, I'm not a PI, I'm the co-PI with the Singapore MIT Smart Innovation Center's grant with the EEE professor, and testing the users, the potential use, and how the key features that belong to the social TV system that he produced. Okay, so it's a study done when I was in the Nanyang Technological University. So it's a mixed method study. Okay. So usually there won't be too much detail, but I have to tell you because of the time. First, of course, you have to be very clear about your research purposes, right? Even though you are actually serving that systems and you want to produce academic paper, you need to be some sort of very clear about your purposes. So it's a mixed method. And why I want to do that? Because you see, we have a systematic review, and in the past, that a system study usually have a few user, and only testing the specific in a lab situation. So the selling point or the importance of my advancement in the methodology, it will be a mixed method. So I interview 70 something people. They are potential users with the younger group, and then working adults slightly older, because we actually consider 18 to 35, the age gap will be the most important first adopters to the system. Okay. So we have this method like in-depth interviews, observation, and web survey, 3 different things. So it's in the real situation, not in the lab. We will show the interviewee is like a respondents and tell them the key features about the systems and let them try. After the trying, then we will follow up the in-depth interview and with a short survey. Okay, so that's what we have done. And you have also justify, okay, tell people what's about the systems and then what are the key components you want to look at, like a multi-screen teleporting, which is quickly they can shift from screen to screen. And in the past, they still have to rely on QR code. And then there are something else like sociability, social presence. These are the important things. And they have the user-generated video. So it's about the content creation function. That's quite cool because they can quickly merge the like YouTube channel or live content from broadcasting TV with their self-producing content. So that will be something quite, I think, quite advanced compared with other systems. Okay, so you have to tell people what is the context of the study, and then so basically you justify why Singapore is the context suitable for this kind of study. And so here you have to have the method. So it's a purposive sampling. So meaning you recruit people with certain criteria, and it's related to your research purposes. I think it's very important. If you just tell people, I'm using a convenient sampling, convenient means convenient. That's nothing else. Oh, is that snowball sampling? Why is snowball sampling? Usually snowball sampling will be, you are very difficult to get that kind of person, and then you need someone to recommend and then go to the inside a group, or they are experts. Okay, they know better who should be the key person to be interviewed. So purposive sampling will be a good term. Do remember that. Okay, so I have to justify, I have a 60, 76 in 2 groups, and then the differences and why I want that. Okay, so the design need to be specified. So there will be a version of the 2.0 and then demonstrate how many minutes, and then you will ask the structure questions, interview, semi-structure, and then short survey. And you also sometimes need to tell people whether you give them token appreciation, like some money, because they are part of the process. Okay, so we have go back to the literature review and then tell people, okay, in the past studies have looked into the STV. There are key characteristics they are examining. So what's the definition? Like we have talked about sociability and the social presence as important things, right? Then you will have the review to support why you want to look in at the 2 key characteristics and evaluate your features based on them. And also I talk about in the past, there are so many different study, especially the system study that we are also doing the system study, right? So they testing lots of 3 different modes and see which one will be the most feasible or appropriate ways to communicate with each other during the video watching. Okay, so we still keep that part. So we'll examine, have questions related to whether you will prefer TV message, no, text or video or voice, these kind of chats during your video watching. Okay. So you also can talk about the past studies, and finally talking about the UGV, user-generated video, and then that's a participatory cultures and for social and demonstrates your profession and so on and so forth. So these are the so-called review. Then in the result parts, you have to tell people what's happening. Since it's a mixed method, so you have to cover all aspects of your findings. So overviews means what's actually at the first glimpse that on your data. So basically observations, it will be the first step. You can see when you tell people how to use based on the full features, and then do they captures and do they can follow, do they have lots of problems or challenges. So basically I think they are quite easy to follow, easy to use. They're adapted to the features. And then in terms of the in-depth interviews, they say something benefits or will entice them to adopt, like convenience, saving time. Like they really like the teleporting, that quickly shift from A to B to C screen, that kind of services or the feature. And so you will have a simple distribution, like frequencies about, okay, what happened in the group, the overall group, and then the separate A and B, and then how they different. So it's very important. I think it's very interesting that A group that use multiple screen for higher than the B group. So it's the younger generation tend to use the multi-screen videos better. It's like more interested, and they have positive responses toward the system. Okay, and then they have stronger interest in to adopt certain components here. You have a question? Okay. So after that, you will go into different kinds of aspects that you want to analyze. We mentioned about the patterns, right? How they use behavioral patterns. Then you will certainly need to see, okay, so the dominant use, your shifting and complementary. And you would like to also, since you have two groups, you would like to compare the differences of the two groups. Do they show the same or they have differences? So shifting will be more frequent in the group A, which is the younger group, and then followed by the complementary. So if it's more qualitative research, you will also have some important quotes to support, and you will use anonymous ways too. So you will have the A1, it will be the A group 1 or 2, yeah. Okay, so complementaries will be something they can use the second stream, and but I do not really see how they actually use the shifting or complementary. Will it be who actually come first, or is a random selection or things like that? Okay. So now you go to each of the features and testing and see how they use and then how they prefer and what did they actually responded to your questions. So something that more interesting is it's very cool at that time. It's very cool. It's a QR code. Cool factor. I enjoy it. I quickly can shift the content. And they always said, I feel I have the self-control. It's like in the past may not have this very convenient, efficient ways to do this. So it's saving time, yeah, less disruptive to my, intended activities. Okay, interestingly, even those who also spend time to talk about the different modes, I don't really see people care about that too much, but they do mention something interesting about the privacy issue. Yeah, so maybe after the social TV system engineering side of thinking, it has changed, and then at the time, people has get used to using Facebook and different kinds of social media. So it's very difficult for them actually just get on a specific, I would say, customized social TV system just for watching TV video or watching TV with someone else and then doing the socialization. So they don't really care about the mode that much. But they do talk about their preferred text because text will be less disruptive than watching video and then also have the video chat. Yeah, unless they are someone closer to them, have a strong time. They want to, like your girlfriend, your boyfriend, they want to watch video together and discuss and face to face, like face to face. Then you probably will do that. And they do like the content creation parts, but they concern, especially the older working adults. They say they would feel like they may cost too much time, and then even though they think it's very cool to uploading, so they thinking about other person. Perhaps there are other specialized usage will be for a group of content providers to discuss about how to develop their content or military purposes, because they don't really see the reason why anyone would like to go to a specific platform to do this kind of engagement. And especially at that time, when I talked to the professor who built the system, they said they still have difficulty to get the content. They couldn't get a traditional like a MediaCorp broadcaster would like to contribute the local content, and certainly they couldn't afford, something like a fancy or foreign, and so will they also have difficulty to recruit, like appear to the user-generated content. So if you don't have content, then it would become just, an empty house. And so who want to actually rent an empty house unless you have very strong security, and then let people discuss something there and then only to you and not reveal to someone else, because they don't need such socializations on that uh, platform too, right? They can have easily do it from social media, Facebook, and things like that. Okay, so at that time, analysis actually will tell them the QR code teleporting will be maybe the killer applications, and they need to thinking about the shifting is more, or complementary will be the reason for them to do this kind of teleporting, and they could specialize on, sort of feature their content creation aggregations. That's a very fancy technologies they can, support, but they need to think about why they want to do something there, and then social. Okay, so these are just and some suggestions like privacy issues, and then word garden means because it's a subscribers only. Word garden means anyone else who cannot enter the system, only those people who are authorized. So that could be one reason why people want to use that. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the so-called the tax or other things. But I think that's not really the important parts. Even though we follow the thread of the research in the past, and we did this, but I don't think that take up a very important space, positions in the findings. Okay, because it's nothing too new. Okay, so the limitations will be after you can talk about, because it's very short trials, and then so basically when they have the responses will be just based on the 20 minutes or 30 minutes, 10 ons, something like that you can think about. Okay. So like this one, it actually is a cooperation, right? It's more like industry driven, because the professor built up some systems. I think it's not just for research. Basically, I think he wants to create to the market if that has any potential for commercialization. So we need to think about 这种产学合作 is working with the industry, and they will have their purposes. And like I joined the public TV stations, like a cost platform, new media data project, something like an evaluation project. Then they would like to know how actually they can integrate the different data from the platforms, and how to have a more reasonable new KPIs for all the data appearing, not just the TV rating, but also how it appears with the mobile, OTT, or different kinds of internet websites. They have so many pieces over the different places. Even some programs also put their shows on YouTube, and they have lots of revenues. It's like advertising support. So what I'm saying is that why you want to join this, and then what can you actually produce? That will be something you have to consider, and what kind of role you are going to play. Like this project, I actually work with I think it's an interesting system. I would like to try it. And then it's a collaboration with me, and then I also sort of coach my graduate student. I have like a 20, 30 people. Ask them to think about the project, ask them to thinking about the interview question, and then I can shape and tell them if it were me, what I'm going to do. And eventually they also go through the whole process to collect a few people, and they analyzing their data. But I'm looking at overall, and some of their data analysis points will go to this class. So it's like a practices for them. So you can think about how to incorporate interesting project with your class teaching, and certainly it's a training for them. You won't be able to use their data because maybe they can help you collect data and then also give you consent, but you won't use their analysis because they also only see pieces of them. Yeah. Okay. So I produced one article and then one conference paper. And so here are some other type of industry cooperating, like this one have the OTT paper and AI in media industry. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, so this is the how much time we still have? 6 minutes. Okay, so we are not going to continue the lecture, but since we have actually finished your proposal topic, sort of thinking about the brainstorming, I think we need to quickly go through. Okay, so let's go back. Not go back. Okay, because that will be another PPT. So you still remember the question, right? So your proposal, yeah. So last week we listening to 2 guest speakers and sharing about how to do the new media research. So purposes and some key literature and give some reason why you want to do it. So it will be a preliminary push for you to think. Since you are with me, so of course it starts with you. And then we talk about some other students, or they can actually ask me later on for more details. So Rona and Esther, and both of you want to do something about social TV, and you would like to compare with the so-called 弹幕, the bullet screen. Yeah. So, but I also has to ask you, so do you think bullet screen is social TV? If it is social TV, why you want to separate them? And then if you think they are A and B, 2 different kinds of things, of course you will separate and then want to compare. And then so if you have bullet screen, which is a very identifiable ways of social TV type, and what is the other side of the social TV, you want to make a comparison. So you may focusing, what I'm saying is you may focusing on bullet screen and recognize it as a unique type of the social TV, mostly popular in China, and that would be something that you can think of. Okay, and your problem will be very general at this moment. So since if you narrow down to so-called bullet screen, then they have past studies, right? So need to look at the past studies and then think about what actually has been found and then what new contributions that you will have. In addition to your focus will be on Taiwanese audiences. Yeah, so you need to think about that. And you said the research gap will be, in the past, they're focusing on more on the audience relations with the TV programs rather than with the platforms. But I'm curious, what do you mean platform? It's a mode, right, to appear lots of words, and then so who actually contribute that? I think it's the audience actually spontaneously create, and also I know lots of people. I think that from China, they enjoy and they are amazingly can consume both the video and also what happened on there, and then just watch it one time. So some people will do it separately, with and without the so-called bullet words on the screen. So there are multiple ways to do it, to understand. But mostly when I mention that to my class, I think several times, they were not particularly enthusiastic with that mode. No matter it's the Taiwanese students or the students from European countries or other places. So I'm more interested. So what would be the key question you want to examine? So what do you mean platform? Is that really a platform? If that's a platform, then platform won't actually have the mode, but also have lots of contents, right? So are you talking about people will go to certain platform to watch all kinds of the bullet screen programs.
I think we originally think that social media platform and OTT platform are separate. But when
So you think bullet screen is an OTT platform?
yes, but just with social social ability.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so because they the reason we are interested in this is because some companies like Facebook, original social media platform, they want to do their own OTT as well. So I was thinking maybe they can use their social ability infrastructure or because they have the connection with their friends only, sort of things like that to integrate into their OTT. So that's the
Okay, so when you talk about OTT and you also talking about the different countries' content, right? Yeah, so that's another issue. So I'm a bit confused about what you would like to focus. If to me, I think that it's also that you can be OTT, but at the same time can be the social TV because OTT if OTT facilitates the in the beginning, I don't think when people looking at the Danmu, the bullet screens, they consider it as OTT. No, I think most of them in the past studies, they just study the phenomenons. So when you talk about OTT means it's an OTT platform and only on that bullet screen, you have to subscribe or you have to log in and you can see a lot of content. And people go there only want to consume whatever over there. Is that what you mean?
yes, like Chengchi and ITV in China offers full screen, but Netflix doesn't. Things like that. We were talking about the OTT offering social element.
Uh-huh. Okay, so the comparison won't be, then the comparison won't be social TV, right? Because you said compare with social TV and the bullet screen. So you need to think about if you want to compare Netflix without the bullet screen and some Chinese OTT with the bullet screen, right? So the function actually is about bullet screen, and bullet screen is the component actually can add the social components on OTT. Then you want to compare. Maybe you don't need to identify, which brand. Maybe the leading brand of the China. I don't know iQIYI and Tengchun which one is bigger. Anyway, so maybe it's do this kind of comparisons. But when you talk about that, if you want to interview your Taiwanese users, do they really understand what you are talking about, or you have to show them? And what kind of questions you want to frame? There'll be with or without, which one you will prefer, or what did you see? And I'm still not very clear. It sounds like you have to really give them the examples. Yeah. And then, but they may have some in-depth questions for you. Want to shed light on. So certainly you have to reframe your accused. There won't be the comparisons between social TV viewings and the bullet screen. Okay, and then it's not really about the comparisons of the PGC and the social media platforms. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay, so maybe just thinking about what you want to study actually is the social components of the bullet screens, how actually they can bring to no matter is the OTT operators or the receivers. And if you want to compare, there will be another question. If without, I think most of the OTT without, not necessary to be Netflix, right? Uh-huh.
I think the reason why at first we think about the comparison between social TV is because if people have the need to socialize, they choose to use different platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Like they want to watch Netflix and use Facebook rather than watching flat ones with full screen. People are thinking about that.
I think we can keep talking about this offline, but what I'm saying is that I really don't, I always say that a brief screen won't actually replace the purposes to use like a Facebook or other social media, right? It's just like you can let others watch what you think on the main screens that's showing the video, and then a lot of information appear. I think it's a very, very unique mode of communication. Yeah, it's more like maybe it's a self expression instead of socialization, but they have the community, feelings. I don't know, you need to really look into the review and think about the questions. And Min, sorry, I think I will talk about Min's, and then maybe shortly respond to each of you, on the Facebook thread that you post. Okay, so Min would like to, I think it also have a potential, but you need to reshape because you also have multiple angles. I think what you want to do is about the recommendation system, is that? And or you particularly only focusing on Netflix, the foreign contents recommendation.
Only Netflix.
Okay, so why you want to narrow down on only Netflix and only non-English, Japanese and Korean content, and with the drama?
Because I saw on Netflix there are actually content with other languages like Thai or countries from Africa. And I found it interesting because those content, it's harder to see those content on other platforms, like other kinds of OTT, since Netflix is the biggest one now. And so I'm curious that because in my Netflix homepage, I always see recommendations from maybe Japan, Korean, and also just American dramas, like from things from the US. But actually, they have very popular content. Like for example, the one I put is Destiny Learn or Love Destiny. 天生一对 it's a Thai drama that is actually very popular, and it's also on Netflix. And I saw that on my homepage only once, and it's not like even in the start of the roll. Like you have to scroll to see that one. And so I'm wondering whether the recommendation system really reflects the user's preference, or does it, because of the percentage of English content or Korean or Japanese. So things from Thailand or from Africa, they're more like a minor genre. So it's harder to see them being recommended.
So who can answer you? How can you be answered?
Yeah,
You have to ask first, like Netflix, and then I think maybe they will also give you the same answer. There will be algorithm based on the majority's statistics in terms of what kind of content will be preferred, and plus your personal preferences, and also there will be smaller amount of available content in Africa or Thailand. Maybe there will be, or that's maybe their criteria to select the video content.
So,
So that's your question, but how could you
it's hard to
do
prove
the
that.
research?
I was thinking to.
You cannot prove it. You have to find someone to answer your question or find some ways to answer your question. Yeah.
So it's not going to work by asking. I wanted to ask people who use Netflix but also watch Thai drama as well.
And
From my knowing, like from I was asking to friends, and most of and people who like Thai drama, they seldom use Netflix because Netflix is more for uh, the US dramas users.
yeah, it's just like the branding actually will provide
Yeah.
the very
The most dominant
yes,
content.
yes. So of course, when you want to watch certain thing, or If you want to buy Gucci, your product, you go to Gucci. If you want to buy Coach, they will have different branding. So certainly they need to differentiate their content strategy. So I'm not quite sure why you want to look at, or whether looking at Netflix and ask people why they couldn't find Thai content and related to recommendation system would be a reasonable way to looking at the design, because I think it's a selection.
So I should just keep, maybe not have two things, like one is the recommendation system and one is Thai drama. Then maybe I should choose one of the.
Yes, I think so. If you want to really looking at recommendations, you don't need to just fixate on the Netflix, right? Every OTT has the recommendations system. You can ask how they actually will, how audiences, the subscriber of OTTs, how much the recommendations will actually have certain impacts on them, and thinking about what kind of impact, and then can do comparisons. Yeah.
To compare different OTTs.
Or different reasons. Yeah. Effective or not effective. That would be one way. And then if you particularly want to look at Thai dramas on OTT, that's another ways to look at it. Yeah. But I think there will be more focus. And then there will be, sounds like more research question or topic. Okay. Okay. Thank you for your effort. I think definitely it will be good if without this, then next week, then you won't have a more clear focus. And I will respond to not real-time participants, the classmates on the Facebook. Okay. So because next week we are going to present, so we are going to have the real time, and Andrew will help from the the sequence, who actually want to go first. I think the co-present students, if you don't mind, we can go first, because I think in the European countries and their time is too early. Yeah, I want them, of course, they have to be in real time, and I want them to participate the whole session, but that's based on the grantees requirement, and I just emailed them today. And I hope next week they will start to be with us, including our Ari will show up, because that's a presentation time. Okay. All right. So yeah, that's for today. And then if you have any question, we still can discuss after this. Okay. Good luck.